All right, recording here Friday morning. Excellent episode coming at you. I think the names say it all. Devin McCourty, James White, both back on the podcast for the first time together, which I got to tell you was not on purpose. The plan was actually just to have James White here Friday and then set up an episode next Monday with Devin, who has been making the media rounds, and split that up, get ahead, kick my feet up, have a weekend, continue to work on longer stories for the Herald, which are going to come out in the next couple of weeks. And then we had a timing conflict, and I said, you know what? In the immortal words of the immortal Michael Scott, why don't we just gangbang this thing and get out of here? So we have Devin and James here for you today. I assure you I did not say those words to them. They were fantastic. You missed them. I love connecting when I can with either one of them, let alone both at the same time. And so this was a really great conversation about basically everything you would want to know. Going inside the Patriots building, talking about Drake Maye, OTAs and what to expect, and then minicamp where these guys had so many teammates. They came through Foxboro, some good, some bad. Some less than bad, and how soon you could tell whether these guys had it or not. And they'll tell you what I should be looking for and then relay to you throughout OTAs and minicamp, and when you can come to training camp and see for yourself whether or not guys like Javon Baker or Layden Robinson or Jalen Polk and, of course, Drake Maye have it or not. So this is Insight, 20 years of experience, very close to it. In the building, Super Bowls, captains, all that. You know them. You love them. We're going to get to them in a second. But first, a small spiel from me, then mailbag questions, and then the back end of this MailFan with Jordan Boss, who for the second time since we've opened the MailFan segment, where you ask me a question, you donate to Boston Children's, and you get your own segment, is going to wrap things up. I just want to say thank you, because it hit me this week is life as far as the Patriots go kind of slowed down a little bit, right? Like there's nothing faster than the final stretch heading into the draft. The draft itself is a marathon. And then you sit with your own thoughts and your grades and you do a podcast and you finally breathe. And so in the process of finally breathing, it hit me that this podcast has been going on for a little over 2 years. And we've had so much growth, whether it comes in from the views or listening, or forget all of the numbers. Just how about having Devin and James, where I love talking to either one of them individually, but both at the same time, and then getting feedback from you as to who you want to hear from. So as we get old stories from these guys, as we hand out grades with Doug and Giardi, as we dance around dick jokes with the guys from The Ringer before the draft, we're getting close to what the best version of this podcast is going to be. And I think it's just going to be something that you know it when you hear it. I'm going to feel it when I'm in the middle of it. And to get closer because of your support, which helps us grow along the way and reach more people and get better with your feedback, as well as the guests that we have, just means so much to me. So I wanted to say thank you. And if you feel so inclined to say thank you back, please leaving us a rating or a review. I think it's been 6 weeks since we've had one, and my pitch is always the same, so I should probably change this up. You've committed, I would estimate, about 45 minutes at least to this podcast episode. If you have another single minute, just leave a review. Just give us 5-star, 4-star, whatever it's going to be. We take all the feedback, good and bad. So please give us the feedback if you have some, again, with a rating or review, preferably on Apple, but also wherever you get your podcasts. And so to, again, say thank you, we're going to lead with the mailbag and then get to Devin and James. And I promise this is something where I almost always break this promise. I said this is going to be quick. And then I finish at the end of a 3-minute monologue in a conversation that's supposed to be with another person. We are going to go rapid fire with these mailbags because, of course, you want to get to Devin and James, and they were great. So here we go. This is from Twitter this week, a couple of days delayed. Apologies for folks who wanted these answers right away. Here they are. Aaron, quote, "Are the Pats still seeking your true number one wide receiver?" Aaron, I got to tell you, I think that boat has sailed. And it's not because the Patriots just gave up and wants to sail away from them. It's just the nature of the market. I think the last chance, and I could be wrong, but was Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, who reportedly the 49ers wanted a high first-round pick that could have landed them Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. or Roma Dunze so that they could just trade away the proven receiver for the supposed can't-miss prospect and just keep marching on to the Super Bowl. That obviously didn't happen. So they're going to run it back around Brock Purdy's contract for one more year, hope to re-sign Brandon Ayuk. I wouldn't rule out a possibility that this happens maybe in the summer. Let's say Ricky Pearsall, who obviously San Francisco just drafted, just completely balls out. Maybe then they're more open to trading Deebo, who I think is a more likely trade target for anyone. But for now, the Patriots, like those are the names that are out there. We talked about T. Higgins. You don't use a franchise tag unless you want to keep him. That's the beauty of the franchise tag for a team. He's going to stay put. So will the 49ers. I think everyone's just going to be in wait and see mode, maybe until next offseason. Pats fan Kevin, quote, what's a scoop at running back? Feels like an area where there's usually 3 or 4 viable names in the roster, but currently there's only 2 that feel like realistic roster locks. I was very surprised there wasn't a day 3 pick here. Do you feel a veteran addition coming? Yeah, possibly. I think they have indicated they're higher on Kevin Harris than you are. And I think that's not necessarily earned, but obviously they're around Kevin Harris more than you or I are. That being said, I wouldn't rule out a veteran addition. I think it might be health related. There are 3 other backs behind Kevin Harris, giving them 6 deep at the position. And this is something that we've talked about a lot on the pod. Rushing success is not so much the guys who's carrying the ball. It's how the offensive line performs in front of him, and then how many defenders are on the other side of the line of scrimmage. So the Patriots go, if we can do our job up front or create favorable boxes through formations or motion or any kind of scheme, then we can run the ball, whether it's Stevenson, who's still a good runner, or Antonio Gibson, who I think is an improvement over Ezekiel Elliott. But if either one of those guys goes down, absolutely, in training camp or the preseason or early season, they're gonna sign a veteran back. Doug, with the draft in the books and looking at the roster, what remaining free agents should the Patriots be targeting to fill the roster holes? So it's funny that I waited a day for this because the Patriots had 2 roster spots when I was writing Wednesday going, what's their next major move going to be? Is it a Bailey Zappi trade? Is it cutting Juju Smith-Schuster? Could it be signing an offensive tackle? And then they signed an edge rusher, and then they signed Joey Sly, a kicker. So there go the 2 free roster spots. They have no roster spots available, again, as we record here Friday morning. What I would say, though, is if training camp starts slowly, like last year, when it was apparent, not just to me, but to coaches I spoke to about this, where Riley Reif, without pads on in the first couple days of camp, got demoted from first team right tackle to second team and then later moved to guard because, in the words of someone I spoke to, if we had 10 reps of pass rush between Riley Reif and Josh Uche would win 9 and the last one might be a tie. So my point in bringing that up is if Chuck Okorafor or Caden Wallace or Calvin Anderson's not ready at left tackle, Bakhtiari and maybe Charles Leno would be 2 names that I would watch for because those are proven left tackles, not cross your fingers like Okorafor and Caden Wallace. Maybe they can do it, maybe they can't. And guys who are available, Bakhtiari obviously with Green Bay, neither in the eyes of the front office are going to be your starters, for the whole season. But at that point, you just need a body. And I don't think the Patriots can afford to wait like they did with Riley Reif and Calvin Anderson, emergency trading for Tyrone Wheatley Jr. and Vidarian Lowe in late August. I think it would be early August if they see they're in trouble because you can't. You would hope, you would think, you would pray, suffer the same fate at tackle as they did last year. And really, if we're being honest, at right tackle the year before. Gary, 2-part question. Quote, 1, will any other player sign an extension before week 1? B, if so, who is that player? I don't see it. So I don't really have a player here for you. And if there is a player, you're looking, the 21 draft class just recently became extension eligible. That's why Christian Barmore got done. No one in 22 is available or eligible for an extension right now. So Stevenson's the last one. And maybe they get some sort of team-friendly deal with him, but the running back market is so, I don't know how I put this. It's not fragile, but it's difficult to navigate or predict based on the deals that the top end veterans got this year, Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, and how Stevenson might view himself. If he wants a bag, then he's not going to get an extension. If he really wants to stay and take like an Uche level team-friendly deal, then yeah, maybe he gets one. But I just don't see that happening. I think he's a guy who will want to hit the market. Though he said on the record he wants to be here for countless years. It doesn't seem like good team business or a number that's going to be, high enough for Stevenson just to take before, he could hit the open market and have all of his options open. Dan, do you have confidence that the new offensive staff will be able to organize a competitive offense? Define confidence. Like I don't remember what I gave Alex Van Pelt for a grade, and I think whatever that grade is has been bumped up by half a letter right now based on things I've learned and spoken to people close to him and who have worked with him before. I think the scheme will be simple and complementary enough, but there's a real concern on my end as far as how many other teams would have signed some of these other assistants, or in fact let some of these assistants walk from Cleveland or New York where you look at now offensive line and running backs for the Patriots, that they really had competition for. It's the same thing for a player. If you're the only one bidding for a free agent or looking to draft someone, there might be a reason for that. Doesn't mean that you're wrong and everyone else was right, but there's just a lot of coaches and assistants who fit into that category. So I don't know, like C+. And that has a lot to do with Alex Van Pelt and a little bit more to do with Ben McAdoo than I expected. But if he's just focused on the quarterbacks, not running an offense, not leading a room, not leading a team, that might be a much better role than I expected when he was first hired. So it really comes down to those two guys. Overlapping questions. We got two more. The first one is the overlap. Chris and Mayor Musings. Who do you see as a starting left tackle? Is the transition from right tackle to left tackle as easy to make it seem? And Mayor Musings brought up Calvin Anderson. So right now, based on what the Patriots have told us, I would say, and Elliot Wolf answered this question himself. So this is not a projection. This is what he said. Either he was lying or they've already changed their minds if it's not Chukwuemeka Okorafor. That's it. They're going to give a guy who was the Steelers' starting right tackle the last 3 years and has only played left tackle in the NFL during the preseason a chance to be their starter week 1. Now, they won't have pads on until the second week of training camp. So he can be there, and you can glean some, as we just talked about with Riley Reef, how well you're holding up against speed rushes, or are you executing your assignments, how's your contact balance, all these things without pads. But he'll be the guy week 1. Calvin Anderson is someone who has had many more starts at left tackle, but was more of a swing guy in Denver, who we just talked about players that teams don't want. He fit that category a year ago when he signed in New England. So I don't think, based on last year's tape, when he missed all the camp and was sick, and there will be more on that coming out, I think, in the next few weeks and months, and I'll leave it there. It's his health. It's his business. But I don't think you can pencil him at left tackle. I don't think it's fair to judge him, what he did at right tackle, not having a whole summer and being thrown out there against the Eagles and the Dolphins. But I think what they really hope is that it's Caden Wallace is the answer to your question. Now, last one from Epri. Quote, you mentioned recently, meaning me, Elliot Wolf spent wisely in free agency. Aside from re-signing players, which is a good thing. No, that was his parenthetical, not mine. No money was spent to improve. Even if it was just the offensive line upgraded in free agency, it would have allowed for more maneuverability in the draft. Why are you so high on Elliot Wolf? So let me say this. I am an Elliot Wolf believer. I've told you this. I've written it. It doesn't mean I see Super Bowls in the future or the playoffs in 2 seasons. But from everything I learned talking to GMs like John Schneider, who won a Super Bowl, Jason Light, who won a Super Bowl, Nick Caserio, we can all see what he's doing down in Houston now that he's finally has full control over a roster, Dave Ziegler, and even Brian Gutekunst, who worked with Elliott for years and years and years in Green Bay. All of them gave Elliott rave reviews. And I get that they know their words are going on the record. So no one wants to be a dick in public, especially with someone that you have to, at some point, maybe negotiate with, talk trade with, or otherwise do business. That said, everything I heard about Elliott on that level with the GMs or scouts underneath him, people who used to work with him, people who knew him in Green Bay, was just sterling stuff. Now, in my own view, I would take issue with the description you just had there. They didn't make any effort to improve. Jacoby Brissett immediately brings some competency, some organization, some leadership to that quarterback room. He would have been far and away the Patriots' best quarterback last year, given what we saw, okay? They also upgraded a running back with Antonio Gibson. And you could make an argument that Austin Hooper is better than what Mike Gesicki gave them. And even if you don't want to make that argument, what I would say is there was no baseline guarantee. There was no copying and pasting the 2023 defense and a roster and just into 2024. Kyle Duggar could have left in free agency. Mike Onwenu could have left in free agency. Hunter Henry could have gone. Josh Uche could have walked out that door. Anthony Jennings. So there was a much lower floor to this team than we will ever see because those guys were re-signed. All of which were re-signed to team-friendly or just perfectly reasonable deals. Like Uche was an incredible steal. And I'm not here to just applaud Elliott at every single move. I give the whole offseason a B. But what I see is discipline in free agency, where they pursued a receiver like you should pursue a Calvin Ridley, but at some point came to stop. And Doug Kyde shared this with you earlier this week. That might be a bad deal in Tennessee for Calvin Ridley. So I see someone who prioritizes the right players internally. I see someone who has a limit in free agency, which you don't see with a lot of GMs, especially GMs who are working on an audition. And then in the draft, takes the quarterback, which we all wanted. We all saw was most reasonable outcome. And I didn't love the Caden Wallace pick, but getting a receiver and then an offensive tackle and another receiver, that's how you draft. Premium positions. Because if you hit, there's no better value than having a player at a premium position who's a high-end talent on a ridiculous cost-controlled contract. So all of the decisions, I've seen the process as sound. I think they've landed in a good place. Maybe you want upgrades here or there. I'm not here to argue. But as far as free agency, if it wasn't Calvin Ridley, okay, what other receiver did you want to see them sign? Because there were names that we threw out there. Marquise Brown might have been it. Offensive tackle Tyron Smith was never going to come here. Jonah Williams, totally fair gripe. I would have pursued Jonah Williams. They felt differently. They didn't want to do it. And that's why it's on A. It's on A minus. It's not a B plus. It's a solid B for me. So of all of those things, that's why I am a believer. So that's about it. And we are going to get to James and Devin. One last thank you and request, if you have a minute, please rate and review. And until then, enjoy this from Devin McCourty and James White. Well, let me tell you, soon enough, we are going to turn our attention to the Celtics and Bruins because they're getting in on the playoff action. And so can you with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where right now you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks with basketball, hockey, and other sports on Prize Picks. And I'll tell you, look, I like Prize Picks for baseball too. The Red Sox just started up. They're playing the Mariners, the A's. I put a little money down and I got a lot more money back. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. I did the same. Again, download the app today. Use code CLNS at Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100, and you can do the same. Basketball, hockey, and baseball. We got a lot to do until the draft, and you can find it all at Prize Picks. All right, come back in time with us. It is summer 2017. James White is a big Super Bowl hero. Bill does not care about that, so we have blitz pickup in training camp. Devin versus James. I need an answer on the count of 3. Who wins the head-to-head one-on-one blitz pickup? Devin McCourty, James White. 1, 2, 3, go.
James, I don't blitz.
Yeah, he's not a blitzer.
I'm not gonna get on here and your post career be like, man, I used to do this, and my blitzing was weak. I need to be unblocked.
Yeah, until 18, right? Till Flo finally cut all of you loose. Like we saw you a little bit of time in that final Super Bowl run, but you just you were out on that and come camp.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm unblocked, I used to tell Flo, draw that thing up. Let's do it one way all game, and then one or two times send me. They're not gonna expect it. I get a free sack. If I'm not getting a free sack, I'm good. That's the one thing about me, though. If I get to the quarterback, I'm not gonna be like the rest of these slaps that run full speed in there and then miss. If I got to the quarterback, I was gonna get a sack.
Does that check out, James?
That checks out, man. He's smart, man. There's a lot of these other guys get a little too excited when they get to the quarterback.
Yeah, it's like, what do I do with my hands when I get here? You know, a kid going to approach like a dog or something. You just didn't expect to get that close.
That's the worst thing about pass rush. I remember we played Lamar Jackson and Chase Winovich. We talked about it all week. Like, you're not going to run in there and sack this guy. Him and Uche run in there, and they're like, man, he's so quick. Yeah. We talked about that all week, guys. Slow down. He's going to make you miss.
Yeah. We'll appreciate both of you coming on. We got a lot to talk about here today, so I want to dive right into it, especially Devin. You took a train. Were you coming from New England today? I know you said you got it back home in Jersey this morning. Yeah,
I was, but I wasn't in Foxboro for this trip. This was a charity thing. I was in Boston.
Oh, good stuff. Thanks for stopping by and saying hello. I'm just down the street. Not a big deal. But you were recently visited with Drod, and there are a lot of stories now. The draft is over. OTAs are coming up. We're talking to guys like you would sometimes once or twice a week. Hey, what do you think of the new program? Yada, yada. The focus is on what's going inside the building. Murals are being talked about, messages. So just from your last visit to the building and Gerard, like, take us as best you can inside what that looks like now under new leadership and with basically a roster that's already put together.
Yeah, I think the first thing, I think it was cool just seeing the different changes they made inside the building. I think no matter what, like, new regimes, like, you want to kind of put your mark on it. You want guys to feel like, hey, we're coming into a new era, because usually no matter whether you step up and you're already there or you're a brand new coach, you're usually coming into a situation that needs some type of change, whatever you want to call it. So I got to see the mural, which I think it's a bigger deal than people make it. I think teams have different things. I've gotten to see that now, right? Being, retired and doing media, I go in different teams' buildings, and it's all different kind of things. But I think New England has been such like a closed door type of place that everybody's like, I heard there's a new mural in there and it represents this. And I think the mural, I think it's cool. Like it's seeing some past legends, jerseys and stuff that are up there. And it's this young kid who is dreaming to be a Patriot. And I think it fits, what they're trying to build there. I think it fits Mayo. I think it's just a new regime. And I think it was a pretty cool idea and concept that they came up with it. And I think the coolest thing is the artist is right from Boston. He's from New England, diehard Patriots fan, grew up a Patriots fan, never spent much time in Gillette growing up as a kid, but always was a fan. So I think that symbolizes what they're trying to go for. And I think that's a pretty cool thing.
So, James, you and I were talking off air. You have not connected as much as Devin has with kind of the new regime, all the changes, except for Ted Harper. Somehow you connected with the team nutritionist, and that's your only link.
Together.
Yeah, so James is doing his own thing out in the Midwest, but I just want to get your perspective, because with that distance, not only just like the physical space, of where you are in Illinois, right?
Yep, in Illinois.
But the time that you've been away from the game and the organization a little bit longer than Devin has, what do you make when you read and see things on Twitter of just all of these changes, whether it's mural related or not?
I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I think for anybody who's been walking into the same building year after year and seeing the same stuff, you want to see, something new, something that gets you excited to show up to work. Obviously Mayo has been there as a player, as a coach. He's seen, a lot of different things. He's coached, he's played. He's going to use his experience to help change things to the way he wants to do. He wants to put his own imprint on it. With Robin, like we've been seeing in the media, like we were talking about before we got on air, you typically never hear anybody else's name come from within the building, but you hear, Robin's name, and she's a person who is very active in the community work. And I think that mural kind of speaks volumes to what, she's done outside of the building. And she's trying to, make that a part of, the football organization, which it has been, but you don't necessarily hear that talked about from the coaching staff point of view. So I think that's a unique aspect and a unique spin they put on it.
So the reason I brought up Robin, Devin, to James off air was I was reading about these new slogans that have an asterisk in the corner. Did you see any of that when you were in there?
No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't pay attention.
Well, the reason I brought up, it was in the story. I Cam Wolf from the NFL Network, and we'll skip over this, but there was an explanation that the asterisk means or represents the North Star, which in her sense was it was something that's always moving, but we're always going to chase. And my first thought was, the North Star is a little more famous for being fixated in the sky, and it then becomes a joke that you have to explain. But just like James hit on, the openness of more people are involved. They're going to try something new. I think you'll see it with the players, with the coaches, just like a play call. They're going to land where they want to. It just might take a little bit of time. But I've been very curious about the asterisk, because it's like,
well, I will say Mayo uses that phrase, the North Star, a lot in coaching. Okay. He always talks about the North Star being whatever we're ultimately trying to get to, of whether it's points allowed on defense, like whatever we were talking about, he would reference and use that. So when you say North Star, I have no idea, asterisk or whatever that is, but the North Star and what that represents, I've heard Mayo speak about that multiple times, like coaching and from his viewpoint of what he thinks that means. I've heard him use that. Okay.
All right. I'll revisit the story or ask around. And I think they're actually going to do a media tour, which might be the furthest 180 that you could have from Bill's time. Yeah. Gerard has mentioned and taking us around, showing us what was new. This might be later on. So I will report back to both of you here in the podcast. But you mentioned the coaching staff. Dev, you dropped this week that like Gerard had raised the possibility of you joining. James, I know you've answered the same question, even if it was just theoretical. Let's say you guys got to take the job and it wasn't the insane hours that it is. I'm curious, what's one change or tweak or idea, understanding what the building was and the program was and what you think it should be or be part of, that you would have pushed on day one of this theoretical job as an assistant? James, you go first.
For me, it's tough. You get so used to and adjusted to the current state. But I don't say, I wasn't on too many special teams when I played, but I know a lot of guys that were on special teams getting more time to get ready, pre-practice, because sometimes you have like 15, 20 minutes, jump out of meeting, get dressed, get tape, try and warm up really quickly, get out on the field. So giving guys a little bit more time to get your mind right, get settled in, maybe look over your plays and all that before you get out there and get ready to go for practice. I think that's one big thing that I would change. But everything else I thought was, fairly standard for, when it comes to day-to-day operations. You're going to meet a ton, you're going to walk through a ton, just giving guys a little bit more time to get ready to go out there, and practice at a high level.
And that was always a thing. Like that was like James knows. We sat in captain's meetings all the time with Bill and trying to discuss, all right, how much is enough time? And then it would be perfect. And then one coach would go over his meeting time that would then make the special teams coach go over his meeting, and it would just mess up every other day. It would be unknown. Honestly, I think for the most part, they've done a lot of the things. Because I think for me, like I've gotten to know Mayo pretty closely. So we used to always talk about different things that could be done differently. And I think because Mayo was a captain for so long, he was always involved in the things that players liked. So I think the biggest thing is being more collaborative on a lot of different things. I think that is huge. And, talking to Slade, I think that's a big part of the reason why Slade is there is I think he's a connective tissue to everything, right? He can be the guy that talks to people upstairs in the front office, the players, the coaches, the staff that are there to help, the support staff that are there to help the players. So I think that is the biggest thing that I would have said of, hey, how do we make this where more people can do what they do best and more people can kind of learn how to lead. I think with Bill, you had a leader that was there for so long. It's just people naturally came in and tried to be him, but there's no blueprint to that. And I think now they have a lot of people trying to create that blueprint to be successful, to be a leader, and they're all trying to work together to get to that, because I think you have to when you lose such a strong figurehead in the building like that was there for 24 years. You can't just say, hey, Gerard, go be Bill. Like that's impossible. You need a lot of people to kind of fill those roles.
It's funny you mentioned connective tissue because that's also what Bill was too, right? Like the guy was the head of the front office, the head of the coaching staff. I assume he wasn't with Ted making the meals, but okaying at least like what kind of PB&Js you guys had before practice, or not at all, So like that, you need more players or people like that to kind of bring the departments together, because we can say collaboration all we want, but what does that look like in practice, and who's leading or initiating that collaboration? Have you talked to Reverend Slate lately? Can you give us an update more, either you guys, like what he's been up to in his new role? Because it sounds perfect for him, is what you just described.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I went up there. For most of the time I was there, I was just in the office with Gerard and Slate. And honestly, like it was a little bit about what they're doing. But I mean, we've known each other since, my rookie year in 2010. So a lot of it was just like catching up and talking trash. And I think that the unique thing is for both of those guys is you were in something for so long and now they're both in brand new roles. So I think both of them are like, man, I'm handling a lot of things that have nothing to do with football. And that's every coach I've ever talked to when they go from being an assistant to a head coach, or for Slate being a player to now being, coach / everything else and in between. It's how many things we deal with that don't necessarily on paper help us go win a football game, but it helps in the grand scheme of things. Like we were talking, he was like, we're talking about childcare. We're talking about the weight room and this thing and that thing. He was like we haven't even gotten to the 3 technique, the wide receiver stance, or the new kickoff. Like we haven't done ball. So that to me, it was fun getting there to talk to them about that, because I've heard, being back at Rutgers in college. And I remember when Chris Ash took over as a head coach, and he was like, I put out fires all day. Like I don't get to watch ball till the end of the day. So I think that has been pretty unique for both of them being into that. So it's fun being able to be there. And I think for me now being in media, same thing with James, is you learn and see so many things from you step back and you can just watch and enjoy the game of football. So I get to talk to them about conversations I have with like my coworkers. Like Jason Garrett to me has been a guy that I've learned a ton from, because the organization he was in was the Dallas Cowboys, everything, all eyes on you, decision making, all the things that he would look at and review. So whenever I get a chance to sit down with Gerard, I just like to pass on that knowledge and tell him the different things I've learned. So I always try to do that, whether it's in person or if we're catching up on the phone or anything like that. But he doesn't come to me to help be the head coach of the Patriots. I don't have those answers.
not to bust on your guy, but have you shared any clapping techniques that Jason might pass on to anyone else? Because he got a lot of love in Twitter Spaces when you were playing for just his constant on the sideline. You aware of that? It's always this. Down 30, this. Up 30, or this.
Hey, you got to keep it the same, man.
Be consistent.
One real quick thing, because you mentioned putting out fires, and this isn't a fire, but it's not to make light of a rookie being anything more than a rookie. But when you talk about things off the field that don't talk to winning, that he might have to handle, Javon Baker's Zoom. I don't know how much either of you saw that, making people stand up out of wheelchairs. The first thought that hit my head was Bill would have traded his ass for a future fifth as soon as the Zoom was over. And is that something that you're talking about? And this goes to either of you, where it's like, I have to deal with this in a leadership position. You guys have been around other head coaches, even if it's not football. And if so, what was your reaction to hearing those?
It was funny. I talked about it with Judon on my podcast. I was like, that's a guy you got to take under your wing 100%. But I like the confidence, though. He's going to come in motivated. Like he said, he wants to bring the hard work, the winning mentality back in there. So I think he has the right mindset. I think it was more about, where he got drafted. He thought he should have got drafted higher than what he is. And now that's like the new thing with the kids. Like they jump on Instagram Live as soon as, as soon as something happens, and they share their thoughts and feelings versus, in the past, you wait till the media calls you talk about it, you could do it all by yourself. So yeah, he was still fresh, asking for where the drink's at and all that. So he didn't get portrayed in the greatest light, but like I said, you see the videos of him working out against, some of the top corners from the draft and all that. So he's putting in the work. It's all about, when he shows up into the building. I don't think it'll be necessarily a big deal. I'm sure Mayo have something cooked up for him the day he steps into the building for the team meeting. I'm sure they'll get a big kick out of that, especially if he's not winning some reps early.
I thought it was hilarious that first day, like MF and liquor. It wasn't just where the drink's at; it's where the MF and liquor at 1:00 on a Saturday.
And you need they need that. You need. I always tell people, James, myself, Slate, we were all a certain way. But the truth is, you can't have a team full of.
Why you ain't say me?
Yeah, what's up?
It just shows up at my house.
All day, just walking around his big crib and look at it. I like this, man. What's up, James? What's up, Andrew? What's happening?
Yo, you're interrupting. We're doing a podcast, bro.
All right, podcasts are free.
Yo, come on in. What Jay say about Javon Baker's comments the other day?
Oh, I love it, man. You talk about superior confidence right there. And they're gonna have to tamper him down. Now, who knows though? Mail's in office now. The old ways are out the window. Let him talk his trash.
Well, I text Slate right away, and I was like, "Hey, the first thing I thought of when I heard that was this guy's the second coming of Jesus. Jesus is the only guy that was out there healing people, couldn't walk. Now he's making people walk. I was like, this is awesome. But I think you can't have everybody who's by the book. Like Jamie Collins came in. Jamie wasn't by the book. Jamie was a dog for the Patriots, making play. Like, you need guys to be like that, to have that edge to them. And it seems like Baker's going to have that. And it seems like they might have got the leader type of guy in Polk. And now you get to build a room around these guys, hopefully going forward into your future. So I liked it. I think receivers need to have a certain level of confidence. They need to be a little crazy. And I'm anxious to see what you guys say in training camp. Like, right, put them out there, and you're going to have Pep's going to be out there yelling and screaming. You're going to have – so it's going to be interesting to have that dynamic, to have those guys with Bourne, with KB yelling and screaming. I think that they need that. I think they need that on offense, some skilled guys that just go out there and compete, but also going to tell you about it. So it should be fun to see.
I'm so glad you say that. First of all, as the content creator media member in me, I will actually take a team full of Javon Bakers. But the point being that, like, if you did have that, what makes him special, or KB, for example, energy he brought in 21 when he first gets there, that stands out because he's a one of whatever in that locker room. Mm-hmm. But I am curious, when you text Saint Slate, this is the second coming of Jesus, and it's a 21-year-old who had just been in Instagram Live. How did that God-fearing man take that text, and how did he respond?
We just got emojis flowing back and forth, dying laughing.
I mean, hellfire and brimstone, or like fire comments, because those are very different, but it's the same emoji.
It was just laughing emojis, and okay. I think that's the thing, right? You draft a young kid who, like James just said, He's excited. He's like, man, all these guys are better than me, and comes in with a chip on his shoulder. And then I think the key is to back it up. And I saw James had Judon on, and Judon was like, he can't walk in with his book bag on, with his head down. Like, you said what you said. Come in and work your butt off and go do that. Like, we want that. If I'm on defense, I'm all for a Baker guy making people stand out of their wheelchairs. I'm all for it. That means touchdowns, yards. Let's see it. Let's have it, So should be fun to see.
Awesome. All right, let's talk some ball, shall we? James, when we're making a checklist, and look, to be clear, my OTAs checklist very different from yours. I'm bugging Stacey James every single day. I want Javon Baker, and I want the quarterbacks to talk every single day after practice. But in the times that we used to see you guys at practice, and will now, it just like once a week or once every 10 days, it's always installs, right? It's, sometimes Texas drills, non-padded stuff, the basics all the way down in the classroom. Aside from that, what do you want the Patriots to prioritize and say, if we get only 2 or 3 things out of OTAs this spring in minicamp, it has to be, A, B, and C?
For me, the number one thing is team building. I know we did a ton of it, when we were there, even though we maintained a lot of the same players on the roster. Now you got new coaches, guys come from all over the place, different players. Make sure you guys learn about one another, the quarterbacks, learning the offensive coordinators, the quarterback coaches, because that's what matters most, Learn how these guys learn how they, go out there and perform on a day-to-day basis. I think that's huge. And then have fun. And obviously offensively, they just got to build chemistry. You got a whole new, offensive coordinator, new players coming in there, build the chemistry. And it starts right now in OTAs and all that. If you come out BS and bullshit during OTAs, that shit going to roll over into training camp and roll over into week 1, week 2, week 3. So I think it's very important for them to hit the ground running offensively, shore up that offensive line. You can't really establish like the run game in OTAs and all that, but the fundamentals, just making sure the ball's not hitting the ground too many times, getting everybody up to speed. I think that's really the most important things. And as an offense, especially collectively, they have to be on the same page. And like I said, those are the few things that I think are very important for them during OTA season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think James hit it. The relationship, to me, that's trust. They have to build a trust, not just, for the players on the field. It's the scheme, the system. Like, there's been a lot that's happened in the last few years, especially on offense, of different coordinators coming in. So you have to build that. You have to build that trust where the player knows what you're telling me, or if I ask a question, you can fully answer my question, or you go to Van Pelt and you go to McAdoo, whoever you need to go to as this new system's coming together, and you get the right answer. Or you don't tell me something, then he tells me. Like, all of those things that can happen on teams, you don't need that. I think that's the first thing, like James said, that trust. I think they have to, it's boring, but they have to build the fundamentals. You have to have that, I think, on both sides of the ball. I think they need to be able, within that trust and the fundamentals, they need to come back together as a team. I think last year was really tough. You heard some defensive players kind of, frustrated after games. Like, I guess we got to hold them to 0 points, or we can't give up.
That was AP. That was DG straight to me. So if you want to blame anyone,
it was right. It was true. It's authentic. We lose a couple games now. It's 6-zip. It's 10-6. It's 10-7. That gets frustrating as a defense. So I think you have to have, that side. I think the third thing for me is just compete. Like, you want to have competition. James said it, you're not going to have the running game, but within the passing game, 7-on-7s, all of those things, you want to see everybody compete. Your receiver room is stacked right now. It's a lot of bodies in there. You want to say who's going to compete. Drills on the offensive line. Trent Brown's not there anymore, so that's a position. Cole Strange was hurt a lot last year. You had different guys in there. You have kind of Big Mike and Dave coming back as like guys who have played a good amount of meaningful football for you. But other than that, you're trying to find who's going to fill in and be in those other roles. So you want to see that. And I think defensively, you have guys coming back, a lot of guys coming back, and you want to just continue to compete. Hey, what we did last year doesn't just roll over into this year. We got to go compete. We got to make the offense better by going and shutting them down every day. Like, that should be your mentality. So I think that's what they want to walk away from the spring.
Let's stay with the scheme for a second, though, because this was something that came out more this week where Rhamondre confirmed, hey, we're doing a lot of wide zone. And if you looked at Van Pelt and the Browns, obviously they did some of that after starting as more of a man-black gap scheme team. But James, like, we I looked at the offensive line this offseason, like that will be the tell. Is this going to be a gap scheme team? They're going to stick with the powers and the counters, et cetera, or pivot to lighter zone team? And they kind of just ran it back, right? Like, except for Chuck Okorafor, they're going with the same line. What do you make of that scheme fitting the talent that you know, having played with all of these guys?
I like it. It's similar to what San Fran does: outside zones, play action, easy access throws where the quarterback's not holding the ball too long. Outside zone, it's a fun play to run, but obviously it has to be blocked correctly. If nobody seals off the edges, nobody cuts off the backside, then you're basically just running to the sideline, gaining no yards. So I think you have to build a chemistry offensively with the people next to you on the offensive line, tight ends. It takes everybody on every single one of those plays, receivers too. But I like the scheme. I think Rhamondre's the perfect outside zone runner. He's a guy who has enough speed to get to the edge. He can put his foot in the ground, make guys miss. And I think it's very quarterback friendly, especially for a guy like Jacoby Brissett. And if Drake Maye ends up playing at some point throughout the season, I think that's a very good scheme to start him off in his career.
And then on the defensive side, I mean, Deb, you faced this offense in 21. You guys win 45-7 at home, and then go on the road and beat Jacoby starting in Cleveland. What do you think of it just from that vantage point? How they marry that outside zone game with the passing game, which seems like it'll be simplified no matter who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is because we played against those guys a couple different times, and we got the best of them in that. But we had another game where tackling Nick Chubb is that's a bit of a problem, and I think
not for John Jones. You talking 19 when he raced like 60 yards.
Yeah, like 8 tackles. Yeah, and I think that's a huge part of the scheme. I think what James just said, Rhamondre's a perfect back for the scheme, and I think that's what it comes down to when you're defending against different teams from a defensive standpoint. Is all right. Who are they using in this scheme? That's why San Francisco's tough. Like, you could talk about their scheme, but it's like, all right, in this scheme, it's going to create a one-on-one matchup against Christian McCaffrey. All right, we have a guy there to make the play. Yeah. He just makes a miss. So that's and I think that's what this scheme will allow you to do, is set up different things with the play action, with the zone, and then maybe throwing in some different gap scheme plays within there, is create the one-on-one matchups that you want, that are favorable to you, and then go from there. I think the biggest thing for them is you got to be able to win. You got to be able to win outside with all these different things. When you're running the ball and you can run the ball well, the way to stop that as a defense is to say, hey, we're going to go and leave everybody outside one-on-one because we think we can stop you one-on-one and stack the box and do different things to take away the time the quarterback has to throw and put the pressure on the receivers versus the DB. So I think that's something that I think they know, like, hey, we got to win those matchups. And I think when we played them that last time, we did a good job of covering their guys. So it made it harder for them to do the different things in the running game. And we were able to get a play from ahead, changes everything how you can play the game. So I like the scheme. It's just, it comes down to execution, like James said, and winning those one-on-one matchups.
I love that. It's the truth. But it's also like asking someone, like, how well do you speak French? Like, oh, I know it, but can I speak it? Like, that's the execution part. It's no good unless you can say the words. Yep. Okay, so the draft is behind us, but that means the best is still ahead of us. I'm talking playoff games, Celtics, Bruins, and I'll be there covering the Celtics with the Herald. We lost our guy, Steve Hewitt, which brings me to my real point. You want to come with? Because you can find Celtics playoff tickets, lowest price guaranteed at Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets easier and faster than ever. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. You can find killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, including those pesky fees, views from your seat, and always, always, always the lowest price guarantee at Game Time, which takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And honestly, I've used Game Time for other games as well. I'm a couple T-stops away from the Sox. If I want to go to a home game, check out on Game Time, wait outside the gates. It starts, prices go down, boom, I'm in the park 5 minutes later with the lowest price guaranteed. So you can do this with the Celtics coming up in the second round. We all know they're going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then hopefully the Finals. And you can be there right with them. Last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, all again, lowest price guarantee, even event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets or MLB tickets, all with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today. Create a free account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, the account is free. Download Game Time, create an account, and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. That's Game Time today. Last minute tickets tomorrow and the lowest price guaranteed. Let's say you guys are back on the team, right? Not as coaches as Gerard would have it, but you're on the roster, you're eyeing all these rookies. We talk about Drake Maye, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, whomever. What are the first signs that maybe, not definitely, but like maybe these kids could help us right away? What are you looking for, the surest signs that like they can make an impact early, even before you put pads on?
I think limiting mistakes. I think that's the huge thing. As a young player, there's a lot being thrown at you. You know, you don't want to go out there making the same mistakes every single day. When a guy's not making mistakes and he's making plays here, he makes a play on one day. Next day he makes 2 plays. Next day he's like, okay, this dude he gets a reps with the first team now. Like how, you know, you capitalize on your opportunities. I think that's the huge thing as a quarterback. Though I think you want to see them step in the huddle and get control of the offense. I can only reference it from Mac Jones. He was the only rookie quarterback to come in and start, you know, from the time when I was there. Just like each week, you're like, okay, like this kid's building a little bit more confidence. He's talking a little bit more in the huddle. He's making some checks that you don't necessarily see a rookie quarterback check, or he's seeing blitzes, he's seeing the coverages. I think that's when you start to build confidence in a ton of these young players. And speaking of OTAs too, like Jacoby Myers, he's a great example. During his OTAs, his rookie year, like we had N'Keal Harry the same year as him. You know, he came in ready to work. He didn't get many reps. But like each week he got more and more. Like, okay, this kid starting to make some plays out there. Sure enough, he's working his way, working with the first team. So I think it's, you know, constant repetitions and consistency is hard to change. Even for veteran players, the consistency is extremely hard. So if those guys can come in, limit mistakes, and consistently make plays, I think that's when you're like, okay, this guy deserves to be out there on the field.
Yeah, you got to know what you're doing, and I think that's the key, because that's the way I always look at it as young players. You got to earn the respect from the guys you're going on the field. And my rookie year, that's what I was most nervous about. When I first got in the first team huddle for the first time, I was like, damn, I'm in the huddle. Gerard Mayo's making a call. Vince is right. Like, I don't want these guys to look and be like, yo, he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. And you're looking at the staff now like, yo, we don't want him in here with us if he doesn't know. So I think knowing what you're doing is a big part of it, because then you could just go play ball. You got drafted for a reason. There's not like this talent gap, and when you get to the NFL, you're just not good enough. No, like you're probably good enough. Know what you're doing, and then just go play ball. So you can start to see that, I think, right away. I think the athleticism you'll see in drills when you're doing different things, whether it was J.C. Jackson, whether it was, you know, throughout my career, Alfonso Dennard. Like, we had different guys. I remember Deron Harmon missed all of spring with an injury, and we got back for early training camp because I had shoulder surgery that year. And we got out there, and I'm like, all right, dude's a rookie. I'm gonna have to like tell him a lot of different things when we line up at safety. And I go to tell him, he's, oh no, I'm down. I was like, oh, shit, he was studying. Like, he knows what he's doing already. And when you get that and veterans, like, I like when this guy's in here with me. You can feel a connection, the chemistry build. So yeah, that's my biggest thing. Just know what you're doing. And if you don't know, I would always tell young players, if you don't know what you're doing and we get out there, tell me, hey, what I got right here. Don't look at me and just nod your head. Now I think you know what you're doing. And then we mess up and, you know, tell me you don't know. I'll try to help you get right. And then we'll move on from there. And then the next time you get out there, like James just said, I expect you to know what you're doing on that play. You can't not know what you're doing again, because then it's like, all right, this guy's not going to be able to help us right away. He's going to have to develop a little bit.
Well, that speaks to the trust you mentioned, right? Like, building that starts with, you got to demonstrate that ability and that earned trust that you'll have making play after play. Like, you guys can tolerate mistakes, but at least know the why and trust that you knew what went wrong before almost it even happened. So you can go back and go, just fix this next time without having to backtrack through that. Now, the Packer way obviously is something we've been writing and talking about a lot on my end of things because of Elliott Wolf, things Gerard has said, draft and develop, and they're going to play the young guys. So I want to start with Drake Maye, because I don't know how much you guys have watched. I mean, James, you've been covering the Big Ten and part of their coverage, and Devin, you're busy on the weekends, I hear. But just from this kid, what you've heard, what you experienced with Mac, what would be a fair scenario in which he starts, and what signs would you see, whether they involve him or maybe the line or the receivers, that go, we should probably sit him? Because I at least think they're going to give him a chance in the spring and summer to make that decision for them.
Yeah, it should be an open competition. It always should be. Nobody should just be handed the starting job. Jacoby will get probably the majority of the first team reps right away, deservingly so. He's the guy who's has the veteran presence. He's played in the NFL. But I think for Drake Maye, is just kind of like what I just talked about, day to day, just building building chemistry with receivers, building chemistry with the line, building chemistry with the backs, showing some leadership, getting command of the huddle. There's a lot to know, at the quarterback position in the NFL. And every single day you're going to see a different defense, a different coverage, a different blitz that you've never seen in college. And they're going to expect you to know how to handle it, not the coach in the booth, telling you, to adjust the play, adjust the blitz scheme and adjust the routes from the receiver. So there's a lot to be learned. It's not saying that he won't or can't beat out Jacoby. It very well can happen. I'm always the biggest fan of, letting these guys sit and, when they earn it, they earn it. Or if the star quarterback's not performing well, then you throw them in there. Because we faced a lot of rookie quarterbacks, throughout my time there. And some of these guys never recover from starting their entire rookie season because their heads just spinning from all the things that they, went out there and failed at early on in their career. But yeah, just build confidence day to day and just learn as much as possible. Be a sponge, ask questions from, ask Jacoby, ask, the receivers, ask the offensive coordinator, stay later, show up early, all that good stuff. Because quarterback's the hardest position, in the game of football. And I said, the more you practice at it, the more you rep at it, you'll get better.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think they should let those guys go compete. And I think for Drake Maye, if he's out there and he's doing all the line calls and he's comfortable, he's able to make throws, able to read coverage, then yeah, I mean, if that's what it looks like in the second or third week in training camp and you're sitting there and you're just like, how can we not play this guy? I mean, we practiced against Houston back in Deshaun Watson's rookie year. And I remember being out there and him and Tom Savage, and I was in school for a year with Savage at Rutgers. And I remember leaving from those joint practices being like, Deshaun Watson's not far off from Savage. Like the way they're reading the coverage, the way 7-on-7 looked like. I was like, it's not like Savage was out there and the ball was hitting his hands and like he wasn't just dissecting and moving. And I was like, once you put in the Deshaun Watson element, I was like, and I think it might have been week one to three, where it was like, all right, this game's not going well. Let's put Deshaun Watson in. He gets in, makes some plays, and then he's off and running. So I think they're going to have time to see. I think one of the key things is I think they want to just make sure whatever's out there is stable around Drake Maye. I think that one of the hardest things for rookie quarterbacks is when it's not stable around them, and then they're asked to not come only do their job, but they're asked to be like that true veteran quarterback. Hey, this guy might be struggling up front. We got to make sure and be prepared that we might have to give him help. So you got to understand when this, like, that's a lot to put on a guy. I think you want to have great stability with your offensive line. You want to know your receiver core, who's playing, who's going to be here, what rotation do we have, how comfortable do we feel, the backs who are in there, third down pickup. You want the back to be really good at understanding, to be able to help the quarterback where it's not all on his shoulders. I think that's what happened for Mac in his second year. I think a lot of things kind of went and fell on his shoulders to try to not only get it and do it, but to fix things. And when you have to fix things, that makes it really hard as a player. You want to get to a really veteran level understanding of what's going on before you're able to like actually help people fix things. And what we used to say out there on the field is kind of like, excuse my language, but situations. Like that's hard to do as a young player.
Yeah. And as a producer of this podcast, it needs to enter a bleep at 34:18. Thank you. But it's a great point, because I remember, like, again, these kids get drafted and our job is to dig more about them and learn about them. And one of the tidbits I had heard was not only Mac back then was giving shit to Nick Saban. It's another bleep, Amit. What he was telling the left tackle when he would screw up, hey, you need to be better. Like we will all fall if you do within 2 seconds there and don't give me enough time to throw. And I feel like that's very different from what you just talked about, right? Because that's accountability, but then there's problem solving while you're also trying to learn. And so I don't want to rehash the whole Mac experience. You guys have both talked about that with me or other people in media ad nauseum, but it'll be very interesting to see how quickly Drake can problem solve, if at all, in training camp. And even if he can, do those habits of maybe extending plays or scrambling end up hurting him long-term, because his solution is to just run away. And that'll work like 4 times a game. It's a killer in third down, 2-minute drive. We've all seen Patrick Mahomes, plenty of other people do it. But
Zach Wilson.
That's your best pal there, Zach Wilson.
When you break it down, I mean, how many times was he just trying to make plays that he was able to do in college? He was able to do that. Drake Maye was able to do that at UNC. I don't care who you bring in. He's probably not going to be able to do that in the NFL. And you don't want to learn that that's the way to play quarterback. I think that's the biggest thing. You just don't want to start that habit as a rookie.
Mm-hmm. I want to run a theory by you because both of you at least watched or saw. Do you see a little bit of Bill on McAfee during the draft?
I saw some clips. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the sentiment, like Brewski tweeted this out, like, if you were never in a team meeting, all these pauses are when Bill is dropping F-bombs, or I think, Dev, you might have tweeted, like, this is the real deal. Like, he's holding back a little bit on the criticism. In listening to Bill drone on in the media, very intensely, very well over the years, I had a theory that whenever he mentioned a quarterback and didn't say anything about accuracy or anything about decision-making, but said so-and-so, like Zach Wilson, in week 2, 2021, can make all the throws, that was Bill speak for, I think he sucks, because that was a compliment to the media of like, he's so talented. But my point is with this, again, just theory. What does it matter if you can make all the throws in shorts and a t-shirt if you don't know exactly where to put the ball and you don't know when to do it, which is the decision-making part? Is this theory something I've been tweeting for 3 years and just sound like an ass, or is there like some substance to this, you think?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. There's so much more that goes into it. You can throw the ball 80 yards and make every possible throw, but if you don't know when to make the throw or read the coverage, like, who cares? You know what I mean? So the mental part of the quarterback position is more important than anything. You don't have to throw the ball 100 miles an hour to be able to, you know, hit a flat route based on the coverage that you're seeing, or hit a check down based on the coverage that you're seeing. If you just know what you're looking at pre-snap and you confirm it post-snap, then you get the ball out of your hands. You know what I mean? So there's so much more that goes into the quarterback position. I don't think, you know, guys should be, you know, focus on all the arm talent. The mental thing is number one for me.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I know Josh Allen still gets criticism of decision, but one of the best things he started to do was check the ball down. We used to play him early in his career, and Bill would say to us, don't guard the check down. Like, nobody should be, he's not going. And we would watch clips where he would buy time. He just wouldn't throw it to the back, who would be wide open in the flat, could get 5 to 8, 10 yards, just wouldn't do it. Then he started to be like, all right, if you're going to play zone and stay back and try to keep me in the pocket, I'm just going to do this, and we'll move the ball. So I just think that's a big part of playing quarterback. Like, there's so many talented guys that can play quarterback because they can run fast, they can throw the ball hard, they have all of like special talent, but can he play quarterback? And that is yet to be seen. Like, you have to watch a guy and figure out, can he play quarterback? CJ Stroud can play quarterback. Like, he plays quarterback really well. And I think when we watch Patrick Mahomes, that's the gift of him is you watch that quarterback documentary and he throws an interception, and right away he's like, they're sitting on me. He knew it right away, and he knew what the solution was. That to me is quarterback. Yes, he has all the other things that make him a whole nother level, but if he didn't have that aspect, he would just be another talented guy.
So the reason I brought that up was not to just use your time to just peddle my own theories and see if you can back them up or not. It's to note that in his analysis of Drake Maye during the McAfee show, Draft Spectacular, Bill did exactly that. Makes all the throws, didn't say anything about accuracy or decision-making, which isn't to ask you what Bill thinks or what he feels or to ask you to speak for him. But it strikes me as curious because he also highlighted the inexperience, which is just a fact. Like, he's made 23, 24 starts. You need to see more in that. But what do you personally feel of a guy that's got that talent? And it sounds like, Devin, like the maturity process and the decision-making, and James, you brought this up first, actually, will be the checkdowns. Will that be a sign of progress for whatever you know about Drake Maye, that he's making the right decision, kind of resisting the urge to show off the arm, which we all saw, which Bill talked about, and reinforces those weaknesses of, okay, he's willing to commit to the decision-making part of this, even as a rookie who might be forced into a tough situation?
I think you can learn it. It's not something that you have to know completely right away. I think that's a part of coaching and developing players. And that's why I say I always lean to the direction of letting these guys sit and learn. And like I said, go against the first team defense throughout practice the entire year. They're going to be throwing all different sorts of things at you. You learn to read all sorts of coverages, blitzes, changing protections. You get more comfortable with it. It's not, these guys don't have to walk into, you know, an NFL building and know everything. If they do, that's great. You can help the team win, a la CJ Stroud. But that's a one-off. Not many people are going to walk in, you know, and take the league by storm. I know everybody's expecting Caleb to do, you know, something like that. He has a great situation around him. Maybe he will, you know, maybe he won't. But for all these guys, it's a learning curve. You don't have to know it now. You can fix the footwork. You can fix, reading coverages. It's all about, them learning and willing to go out there and, embrace it. Like I said, you can escape the pocket sometimes. You can do all the fancy stuff. You can throw it 80 yards down the field. Nothing wrong with that. But how consistently can you get the coverage right and get the ball out of your hands, in 2 seconds? I think that's the number one thing.
I would be interested too to see what Bill said about the other quarterback, because I didn't pay attention as closely, but I felt like on social media right away, like as soon as the pick came in and he was like, the guy compares himself to Josh Allen. I don't see that. His footwork is. I felt like everybody was like, Bill hates Drake Maye. He doesn't like. I was like, yo, Bill's been criticizing every single draft pick. He starts off and he says like one or two. It was a team meeting. I was like, he says a couple things they do well, and then it was just like, but if they don't do this, if they don't do that, they got to do this. So I just felt like he was very authentic, and I loved it from a fan standpoint of I don't really know what I'm watching when I watch the quarterbacks. Like I don't fully understand that. Yeah. So now as I watch these guys and I can try to remember back to what Bill said, if I'm a fan of the Bears or I'm a fan of Washington or New England and I'm watching these picks that we just got in the top 3, I now should be vividly remembering, okay, Belichick said his footwork sloppy. All right, the commentator, the broadcaster might show in a replay of like his toe is pointed the wrong way. Like, dang, Bill kind of said that. Hey, Bill might have said about Jaden Daniels, he'll have to figure out when to tuck the ball and run, when to stay in the pocket. And, oh, man, like I remember. So that to me was a unique thing about having Bill on there and not just saying, this guy's great. He does this. He does but actually going and having cut-ups and film ready of this is what this guy does really well. This is why he's the number 1, 2, 3 pick in the draft. But this is also what this guy's going to need to do to be successful in the NFL. And I think that's what he kind of put out there for Drake Maye. But I thought it was cool because he put it out there for every single player that got drafted and whenever he had the cut-ups ready for him.
Yeah, and that's totally fair, right? Like, what does it matter if it's removed from the context? This wasn't analysis in a vacuum. It was specific to Drake Maye, but it's within the context of a show. If he was, same balance, negativity, positivity with every prospect, well, then that's just how he did it for everyone. It wasn't unique to Drake. It also speaks to the authenticity part, right? Like, I think you guys have both succeeded well in your post-playing careers because there are guys who just want to get up there and compliment their old teammates or coaches or not, they fall back on the old media training habits. And Bill was like, no, F it, I'm going to tell you what I think. So that's why I caught
real look. Yeah.
yeah. And we care about what he thinks and what he feels because he's the smartest guy in the room wherever he walks. 2 quick ones, though, and I'll get you out of here. Speaking of the authenticity part, I need just a good OTA story. And this might be like not a scale of 1 to 10 because they're OTAs and they're not padded. It might be like 1 to 5. So I'll take like a fine average, but just 1 year of practice that made you laugh or someone stood out or, okay, this might be a problem. Just something you remember around this time of year that ended up being a little more meaningful than you could have known at the time.
I say for myself, my rookie year. I remember when I first got to Foxboro, I don't think there was sun at all that entire OTAs. It was just raining and gray, outside. And one of the practices, it was raining out there. I was, me and Shane, I think a bunch of the backs were like banged up. Me and Shane were repping and all that stuff. I probably slipped during practice at least 3 or 4 times. And everybody that plays with Bill knows he loves it when it's raining outside because if you slip, you're gonna be on the highlight clips. And I was on there in a team meeting at least like 3 times, slipping all over. I mean, look, you're cutting on the outside edge of your inside foot. You can't stand up. You're no good on the ground. We can't complete a pass. So he was ripping me. And then like I vividly remember, I think it might have been 7-on-7. Like Tom was trying to complete a pass to Jules or something across the field, and like Jules slipped trying to catch it. He's like, we got our 2 supposedly best players. We can't complete a effing pass on air. I mean, what the like he just that type of thing.
We can go to Foxboro High and get guys that can throw this.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. It just let me know early that everybody's getting held accountable, not just me as a rookie. So that's one that stuck with me.
Don't slip. When it's raining, if you slip, you will be on the low lights, no matter what. For me, I always thought OTAs and stuff was like, it was I always told guys, it's a good beginning to learn, and you should try to learn as much as possible. Because like what I always remember about OTAs is there's always a bunch of guys who dominate OTAs. You guys write about them nonstop. This guy's phenomenal. And like, I used to always be like, no one cares. It's so irrelevant other than, do you know what you're supposed to do so when real football starts, you can go do that? Because like, I watch guys come and train into OTAs and have some of the best OTAs. And I was like, I was going to start this year. And then second week in training camp, it's like, this guy's still on the team? I mean, he hasn't done anything. So, yeah, I thought OTAs was exactly what James explained earlier. It was a great time to laugh and joke. Like, I still remember it might have been my rookie year to be done with mini camp, OTAs, all of that. We come out and we do a relay race. It's Brandon Dedrick, Kyle Love, Vince, and Gerard Warren. This is the 4x100 team. And it's like, you guys got to run under, I want to say maybe it's like 49 seconds, for something like that. And that'll get us, and we'll be done for practice. And now you're sitting there, you're like, damn, like, how's this going to go? And Gerard Warren, we call him Money. Money starts it off, comes out the gate, and I'm like, oh, big boy's rolling.
Big dude, yeah. Gives
it to Dedrick. Dedrick runs, and then the last two, Kyle and Vince, are like, that's where you're like, I don't know. And they get this baton, and I mean, Love rolls, and then Vince gets it, and Vince just strides it out, and they run like maybe 2 seconds faster than the time, and everybody goes nuts. We're done for the spring, off till training camp. And like, that to me was a cool, just kind of introductory. All right, this is what the NFL's like. Great bonding time. Nobody really cares how many balls you caught or how many interceptions you got. Just come back and do it when real football starts. But that to me was, like James said, if you could have a good session and a good spring, it just carries you over into training camp. It's a good feeling about you. You just didn't want to have too many days where Bill came in and was just like, this is bad, guys. This is bad football. We're dropping balls. Like, you're going to have some of those days, but you just don't want a majority of those days going into training camp.
Right. Yeah. Growth might not be linear, but if over all the days you have more good days than bad, you know, you can kind of trust that guy. Is there a position? Because when you start thinking like, this guy crushed OTAs and the media is loving up on him, I first think of receivers. Now, a defensive guy might say, don't pay attention to the receiver. But is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, it doesn't matter until they get jammed in the second week of practice.
I mean, 2022, how many deep balls did we complete in practice in OTA? Yeah. Oh, they're going to throw the ball down the field this year. This is going to be electrifying. It was like, we're in shorts and a T-shirt. Like, guys are making one-handed catches, and it was just like, let's take it easy on these guys. Like, guys are told in practice, like, let's not dive on receivers' legs. Let's stay up. And it's like, we always get like 3 receivers every spring that are going to be like first-team All-Pros.
It's definitely receivers number one. I'll tell you firsthand, we had countless guys that show up during OTAs, have a field day, and then training camp comes around. You have the physical part of football gets implemented, and they kind of disappear and make a play here or there, and that's about it. So, number one is the receiver. That's their time to shine, though, during OTAs. You can't touch them. They're throwing the ball 99% of the time, so you're going to get a ton of opportunities to make plays.
Yeah, and those twitchy edge guys. Like Josh Uche, I think, has 7 sacks a day.
Yeah, that too.
A little different.
Well, I always laugh because those guys they'll all complain, and I would tell them, I'm like, you guys set the tempo. If the defensive line slows down, then the offensive line will come. I said, you guys complain about each other, and then you all go out there and you block each other and you rush like we're in full pads. I said, and then the head coach has to come in and literally tell everybody, hey, we got to take it easy. I said, the coach is telling y'all to take it easy. That's not supposed to happen. And I think that's a newer thing. When I first got in the NFL, OTAs were a joke for the line. They would take 2 steps, 3 steps, and just stop. And that would be it. And Vince would tell me, he'd be like, man, these guys doing all that right now, it don't matter. We'll see what they do when I stick my hands in their throat. Or I feel like, and that to me, I was like, that's a real defensive lineman. Like, he's telling you, I don't care. Like, Logan Mankins wasn't blocking people hard in OTAs. Yeah, when training camp came, he was killing you. Like, that's the mentality of those guys. That the rest of the stuff is nowadays is like, all right, the media's here today. I want to make sure they write something good about me. Yeah, that's the difference, I think. Everybody
That's
has
the first
a
mistake, giving a crap about what we think. But I get it. It sounds like permission for me to take a daiquiri to my first like OTA practice. Just got to sit back.
Hey,
like,
man, you do what you got to do to keep getting those paychecks.
Yeah, man. It's hard to evaluate, honestly.
All right, we'll get you out on this real quick. We talk a lot about Drake. We talk about the receivers. We're going to talk about all those players we just mentioned in OTAs because that's the calendar. That's what we do this time of year. Who's a player that each of you think for the Patriots, not getting a lot of love now, probably won't in the next month or two, that has a real chance to kind of break out in a way that's genuinely surprising? Not 12th in the list of 20 players who could break out this year, but like actually can do it. And we're not really talking about.
That's tough. Somebody that
I think I know Dev's guy.
He
followed you around like a puppy for all of his rookie season and got hurt last year. So we're not talking about him.
I mean,
I do think he's one of the guys.
You go first.
I do. I think Marcus Jones is a guy that kind of has been forgotten. Even like I saw so many people like the Patriots should draft Cooper DeJean because his return ability. And I'm like, well, Marcus Jones like 2 years ago was, he's an unbelievable returner. It was like second team or first team All Pro or something. I was like, he's pretty good. Like he's going to be healthy this year. So I think it's going to be interesting how their corner situation works out. Who starts opposite Gonzalez? Do they want John Jones to still play outside? And does that free up Marcus Jones to now start in the slot? So he's a guy I've always been a fan of. I think he's one of those young guys that I could tell right away. He was hurt. He knew everything. He was asking questions. So you just knew like, all right, well, we'll see when he gets out there. And then when he got out there, it was like, oh, this guy's twitchy, he's fast. Yep. And then once he got out there with pads on and you were like, oh, he likes tackling. I mean, he's hitting people. I was like, oh, this guy has a chance to be a pretty good football player. So I'm excited to see him. And I think the other guys, I want to see Doug take that next step to being one of the best players at his position in the league. Because I think between him and Pep being there, I think they have a chance to have one of the best tandems in the league. They just got to continue to be consistent. And James talked about earlier, I think those two guys have special abilities to have those plays that are like, wow. So I think if they could just have a straight line of consistency and then the splash play, consistent splash play, I think they have a chance to make their defense special. Just having those two guys be elite studs this year for them.
Under the radar player for me, I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say my guy, Tyquan Thornton, just because I know they have a very deep receiver room, different body types, but he's the one guy that's, sets himself apart as far as the speed. You got a new offensive coordinator, new head coach and everything. So you get a fresh start, clean slate. Heard he put on a little weight. My dog wasn't, probably like 160 soaking wet. Yeah. So he put on a few pounds. So I want to see him come out here, compete, because he's not just fast. He has the quickness. He can get in and out of his breaks. That's something I tried to stress to him for the little bit of time I was there with him. Like, dude, like when you step in front of somebody, like they're gonna fear your speed, but you can get in and out of your cuts. You're not Tyreek Hill, but you can get in and out of your cuts well enough to threaten all these guys, run any route you want. So that'll be my under the radar guy. A guy who's not so under the radar, I think Hunter Henry's gonna have a big year this year. David Njoku had a huge year, like almost 900 yards last year under Alex Van Pelt. So the tight end position is going to be used pretty heavily. Hunter, I know he got banged up some last year, but he's a mismatch. When he's on, he's a tough guy to stop. He's a tough guy to bring down. So I think he's a guy that'll have a big year for this offense.
And Tyquan had a good game in 2021 against Cleveland.
Yeah.
I think he had 2 touchdowns in that game.
So I'm sure the coach seen that. So
yeah. 22.
Yeah, right when KB got hurt at the start of that, took that jet sweep that I think was for KB and then goes in. He's the official weight, because I checked in on this the other day, up to 188. So I don't think he's stepping in the ring anytime soon with the heavyweight division.
That's solid though for a receiver. Yeah.
Especially this day and age. He was slim, man.
Yeah, up from like about 180, maybe even less after some of those training camp practices when you guys are sweating out 5-6 pounds a day. But yeah, we'll see. I like both those picks. Not that you care about what that says, but Hunter Henry too. People forget was like viable fantasy option the way he was scoring at the start of last year. Philly, Miami, not against the Jets, but as the season wore on, was just like red zone target, third down, and was the only guy getting doubles until Pop Douglas. But yeah, I think he'll bounce back. I think those are good picks, and football will be here soon enough. Even if now it's going to be a short t-shirt.
Who you got?
Who I got?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I might have to tease it for next episode. No. That's well done by you. I think I'm going to go Daniel Quale. People forget that he's a guy that, like, on a per snap basis is going to gets hurt last year, contract year for him. He's a bit older, but like that interior push, him and Barmore, like I think with Barmore getting more doubles, he could get 5, 6, 7 sacks this year.
I like it.
When you see Barmore in the locker room, tell him to send me the Dior shirt that he wore. I want a free Dior shirt.
You know what he's going to be doing? He's going to be doing that meme with just a stack of dollar bills. I can't hear you, so I'm not doing media today. I'm just turning around. It's just going to be more. I can't hear you. All right, Devin McCourty, James White, still the best, even in retirement. James, drop the name of your pod. Anything you're doing, Devin, do the same afterward.
Yes, sir. Make sure you guys check out the Money Down podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Got a giveaway going on right now for signed football, so make sure y'all enter that. And now I'm on Big Ten Network as well and Sirius XM.
Man's doing everything, man. He's a working man right there. And he's a husband and a father. I'm not doing anything. I'm just relaxing right now.
Daddy daycare down in New Jersey when you're not coming up.
That's what I'm about to go do right now. Pick up the kids from school.
Well, stop coming to Celtics games. I saw you at game 2. The only game they lost to James is Miami Heat. I promised James we wouldn't talk about the Heat, but
that's all right, man.
Blame Mr. Kraft. I was supposed to come home. He invited me to the game. You don't say no to RKK. RKK invites you, you go.
That's true. Oh, are we going to see you guys for Tom's celebration, you think, the 12th?
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, cool.
We'll definitely be there.
Yeah. All right, good. We'll see you there. Thanks again, guys. Still the best.
Later,
good to see you.
All right, wrapping up as we do once a week here with the MailFan segment. Jordan Boss is back. Still a Jord tester, yeah?
Yep, still in the dot.
Excellent. So Jordan has a question, which, as you know, if you've been listening to this segment, first of all, he's asking that question because he donated to Boston Children's Hospital. Second of all, I'm going to read him his own question, then let him answer his own question, and then I will go on from there. And I think it's a good one because you DM'd me actually last week, and we ran out of time around the draft, which tends to happen. But I think the new one puts us looking forward in a manner that's not quite training camp. But before we get to surprise cuts, you've got Patriots veterans who are on notice. So you asked exactly that. Which Patriots veterans got put on notice after the draft? And your answer would be what?
I mean, I think it's a couple for sure. I think you look at, they attack the quarterback room, the receiver room, and the offensive line. And I think those positions are the most competitive positions on this team. And I think those are the ones that are under fire right now. So you look at it, Juju Smith-Schuster, I just don't see him making the team at all. I think that's just going to be, I think they're looking for a trade partner. I think they're just going to cut him. You look at all the videos and like Instagram stories that have come out the past like 2-3 weeks about like everyone like Pop Douglas, Osborne, Kendrick Bourne, like you don't see Juju out there. You know what I mean? I know he's older, but like I don't know if you can even play anymore. Like that might even end up being like a retirement potentially, but I think he's on the hot seat. Tyquan Thornton, I mean, it's year 3. You got to put up some numbers, but I don't think he's even going to get that opportunity. I think Bailey Zappi, I don't even want to say his name because that's such an obvious, like, you're just going to trade him for a 7th-round pick in 2030 or something like that because, Joe Milton's getting those third-team reps. Bailey Zappi.
That sounded personal for a second. Like Bailey had dated an ex-girlfriend of yours. I'm glad you pivoted to something more professional.
It's the Bailey Zappi fans. It's just like, come on now. Like everyone that said like, oh, draft Zappi or draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and start Zappi. I'm like, do you want to make everyone upset?
That was the thing. I must have missed that.
Sadly, it was. Yeah, it's like the following part of Twitter where it's like not for you, it's whatever. But I think it's Zappi, Juju, Thornton, and then I think it's the guards. I think it's everyone that Belichick drafted. I know that you and Doug said this last week where it was like, hey, maybe Elliott Wolf doesn't like Mafi or Jake Andrews or maybe Cole Strange. They're like, you know what, you've been undersized for the last 3 years and you're injured every year and we don't trust it. So I think the guards, I think Juju, Tyquan, and I think Zappi are the ones that are most likely to be on notice.
I think that's spot on. And when you hone in specifically on the draft, right, 7 out of those 8 draft picks were on offense. That means they're going to replace some guys who are currently on offense. And I think you hit the right names. Bailey Zappi's a trade candidate. You've got 5 quarterbacks in there. Like that is, as I wrote the other day, violating some fire codes probably in Gillette Stadium. Juju just doesn't make sense. This is a team that's following the Packer way, which mandates after you get younger, you then play the kids. And so even if that's not Tyquan Thornton, it'll be Jalen Polk or Javon Baker. And then after them, it would be a guy who's in his second or third year, a la Tyquan Thornton, not Juju Smith-Schuster, who by all accounts is pretty washed. I will throw one more name in there, specific to the offensive line, because you hit the right ones. Jake Andrews, Tony Amafi, City Sal. Cole Strange is another one to watch for me. Now, obviously, they would need a replacement at left guard. But you'll remember that back in that 2022 draft, all of us going, WTF. Like, that was one of the first episodes we had done on this podcast. We all saw a left guard out of Chattanooga. I don't know exactly who would replace him, but Nick Leverett was one of their later signings in free agency. Again, it was a backup in Tampa Bay. But if they feel comfortable enough, this new regime with him, that's basically not just a receiver, a quarterback, and an offensive lineman. That's the whole 2022 draft around Marcus Jones is the only one left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something where it's like, because I didn't think about this. I was like, why are they drafting more interior linemen? We have enough of those guys. And these guys they don't sound, maybe Wallace, but they don't sound like that they're projecting at a tackle position. Like Layden Robinson doesn't sound like he's going to be a tackle. But then you're like, well, it's because Elliot Wolf was probably in that draft room being like, I cannot wait to get my shot because these guys are out the door. So for me, it's like, you know what? They're starting fresh, which I really like. I mean, I would have loved them to get a number one wide receiver. I feel like everyone's, get me IU, get me one of these guys. And I really want to know what that asking price was. There's no way they wanted the third pick of the draft for one of these guys. But I mean, I really wanted one of those guys. But now that they're not getting that, I think they pivoted to, all right, we're going to play the young guys. And obviously that means Juju's out the door for sure.
Yeah. And I looked on defense because I wanted to have a non-obvious answer for you. But at some point when you're looking at a roster where, in a couple months, everyone on the beat is going to do their 53-man roster projections. It's not going to quite be a circle on top of a circle, but it'll be a Venn diagram where there's very little space on the outside of as far as what I wrote versus what Mark Daniels wrote versus what, anybody else in the beat wrote. So it's interesting to kind of follow. Defensively, though, I would say, again, guys that you're targeting who might be a little bit older or at positions with better depth. And they added Marcellus Dial, who I don't know if he's going to necessarily play right away. He's a sixth-round pick. Most sixth-round picks get cut. But some of the backups near him, Sean Wade, I think, has run out of lives as the fifth corner on this team. Alex Austin's in there, but like how much pressure on a guy that, knows he has to earn his job every single year anyway. And then the linebacking core is what it is. So it's difficult to find. I think they've got the right pieces in place, but your mindset is the right place. It's guys on offense, and then it's guys who are going to age out faster than not. And if they don't make a trade, though, as far as Juju or Zappy goes, I'll be fine with that so long as they meet kind of a roster cut deadline, right? Like you can have more competition in camp. If Juju's got anything, might as well bring the best out of him or try to do that now. Or are you in a rush to deal either him or Zappy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to see Juju on the field. Because like you mentioned, like this year, they're not going to be successful this year. I mean, knock on wood, but they're not going to be a team. So I want to look at the end of this season and say, all right, Drake is the guy, right? Or Drake is progressing. Or, hey, Pop had a great year to jump from his rookie season. Or, hey, Kendrick Bourne looks back. Or Javon Baker looks like a true, beast out there, whatever it's going to be. So Juju is kind of pointless, right? It's almost like the Denver win last year. It's like, this was a pointless win. We got nothing from this. Like, Juju on the field, if he scores a touchdown from Jacoby Brissett, does that help the 2025 Patriots? Not even close. It probably hurts them, right? So for me, I want him out the door. One thing I was reading earlier today, I think they just signed Joey Sly's kicker. So maybe hot seat Chad Ryland. If you have another shaky camp, I'm just getting rid of you. Or pick the next guy that's in the USL FL or whatever the new XFL is called. Like pick the number one kicker from that league and bring him over. So I think he might be on the hot seat, not because of the draft, just because you had a horrible year last year, and kickers are one of those. It's like I always said, kickers in the NFL are almost like fantasy defenses. Or kickers, it's like you're going to take one or two, and then after that, just if someone's on a bye, just replace them. Like it's ride the hot hand.
It's interesting too because Sly filled the last open roster spot they had, and they have rookie minicamp coming up, which just gets way into the weeds, right? Like I think most football fans are washing their hands right now, unless you have a dynasty draft or something, and say, "I will see you in July when there's more football to be reported on and actual practices going on." But I would say is those rookie minicamps are not just for the draft picks. It's not for Drake Maye, hey, play catch with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. It's for dudes like once upon a time, Malcolm Butler, come take a flyer, Gunnar Olszewski, come take a flyer, visit. If you impress us, you can get a roster spot. And the Patriots, at least now, are confident enough that if that happens, and again, it does often enough where you keep extending these invites to other players who didn't get drafted or signed since, that they would have to cut someone. And of course, being a team coming off of a 4-13 season, like there are guys to cut. But to me, it expresses a confidence in the roster from the regime as it is now that might be a little bit higher than what we have on the outside, which doesn't mean they're right. Patriots were more confident than most of us were on the outside, even those of us who said they might go 9-8, 10-7. But it's an optimism that I think they know and believe, at least in their young guys. So we just haven't seen a whole lot of. And those are the guys we're going to see a lot more of going forward.
Yeah, and just preaching the competition side of it that Wolf and Mayo have preached the past definitely the last couple of days. I think ever since Mayo got here, I think it's one of those things that kind of puts every veteran on notice, saying, hey, like, it's a competition. It's not how much money you're making. Because think about it, for the most part, none of these guys got any money from Mayo or Elliott Wolf, besides like Onwenu and Kyle Duggar. So besides those guys, they feel pretty good. But name any. I mean, Juju's a great example because he got paid and he's been horrible. But like Devontae Parker was one of those guys where it's like, hey, we didn't give you this contract. We have no problem cutting you or trading you to the Eagles for a bag of balls. So I think that competition line really kind of shows you, hey, like whether you're an undrafted free agent, 7th round pick, tight end, whoever it's going to be, like you have to work to make this team and get some playing time, which I love.
All right, one last note, and we'll get you out of here. And this is putting you on the spot a little bit. Is in day 3 of the draft, Elliott Wolf and Rod Mayo called and involved Drake Maye in a way that was like, hey, here's what we're thinking. Here's who we like. What do you think? Which just shocked me, like back further into my seat than I ever expected. Because first of all, of course, that's as far away from Belichick roster building philosophy as you will find. Second of all, Maye has not taken a snap yet, and he's already being quote unquote involved to a small degree in these decisions. So I would say, Jordan, as someone who is new on this podcast, if you were to be involved in the roster making, building decisions in this podcast of guests to come up, who would you like to see as the Drake Maye to my Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo come on as we build out this podcast? Guests in the next couple of weeks as I start to have a draft here further into the offseason.
I mean, it's a pretty long list. You could go current players, former players, coaches, whatever it's going to be. For me, I mean, big reason, Tom Brady, probably not going to happen. I would love to get, I don't know what his name is. It's the receivers assistant coach that came over from Washington. I think he was quality control coach with Washington, or maybe he was receivers coach. Yeah, I love to get him on because not only is he going to tell us, what does he want out of receivers, but give us some Jalen Polk, background, give me his background. So he's one of those guys where I'm like, you had some influence on that pick with Jalen Polk. You're going to be here. That's probably the heaviest position that we're looking at. Like going into camp, we're looking at receivers. Like that's obviously Drake Maye, but like that connection is going to be so important. So I like to get him on. Let's see what he has to say.
I think Tyler Hughes would be honored to be on this podcast. I've never spoken to him one-on-one in person. He was not here last year. He was a grunt in 2022 as a guy who's even been a head coach at the high school level and I think small college level. But we will get to know Tyler Hughes a lot more. I don't expect he will be on, but we might make a phone call or two. Who knows? It's a whole new era in New England.
I mean, he's probably pretty free. Like I don't think he's gonna get the Tom Brady roast in a couple days. So I think he'd be someone that would be one of those. All right, like let's see what you have to say, kind of guys.
Yeah. All right, Jordan, thank you for donating to Boston Children's Hospital. Thank you for coming back on the podcast, and thank you for participating here. A couple of questions, one of yours and one of mine here as we wrap up another MailFan segment.
Of course, happy to be on.